Hi, everyone. I am here to do an experiment, which is to interview a couple of Acumen Fellows, which is a huge honor. It's actually hard to believe that it's almost a year ago to the day. In fact, we were all arriving a year ago to the day in Nairobi, Kenya, to celebrate the global gathering. A community of 400 fellows and partners, corporate partners, to really manifest what Acumen has become, which is this community based on shared values, not based on tribe or ethnicity or race or religion. And I think you won't find a person, and John was there from EY, who didn't feel fundamentally changed by that whole experience. And it also led us to understand that we needed to do more. In this moment of so much cynicism, in this moment of so much pulling in, what could we do to actually take this to the next level? So less than a month later, we had our board meeting, and we presented to them this idea that we would take the fellowship and we would move from 3 regions to 15 in the next 3 years, so that we'll go from 450 to 1,000 by 2020. We're on our way. We're in execution mode. We're looking to move to Bangladesh with Eileen Ajani, who was in our very first class of fellows in 2006, to Colombia with Laura Ruiz, who you will meet, to Ghana, and to Spain in 2018. So be ready. But we thought that it would be important for you all to get to know just a couple of the fellows, 2 of them. One is Judith Owigar from Kenya, who started an organization called Akira Chicks. She's one of the best techie women in Kenya, and has been transitioning into the UN, really looking at smart cities. And Laura, who did her fellowship year in Pakistan with another fellow, Benji Williams, and then went back to Latin America and is now the leader that is being the entrepreneur for Acumen Fellows Colombia. And so we're bringing them on. It looks like the experiment is beginning to work. They apparently can't see me, but I can see them. Can you guys hear us?
Okay. Yeah, we can.
So just know that we're all welcoming you for so Nairobi, Colombia, brought to London. And really, we want to do 3 things. We only have a few minutes. But one is to get a real sense of what the experience was for you, who you came in as an Acumen Fellow, and who you came as you went out, knowing that the fellowship really is for life. So, Judith, can I start with you?
Yeah, that's fine.
So who did you come in to the fellowship as, and what happened during that first year? How did you change?
So I guess I'll just start with what question I came in with into the fellowship. When I came into the fellowship, the question I was asking myself was, am I the right person for this job? Like, for the role that I was actually undertaking. And that's, I came in a little bit unsure of myself, despite the fact for everybody or most people who saw me on the outside, they saw that I was pretty confident, pretty put together, but I had a lot of doubts in my mind whether I was the right person for the role I was put in. And at the end of the year, or throughout the journey of the Acumen Fellowship, my question changed to, is this the right role for me? And I started thinking about my contribution to the organization, my contribution to my teammates. And in the course of the year, I actually decided that I made a decision that I was going to leave the organization. And with having said that, one of the things I made sure I did was put in place measures that the organization will survive even beyond my existence. It was really an introspective journey, and what I realized is I had to figure out myself in order to figure out what impact I can bring to the world.
Thanks. So even when you were recognized by President Obama for being one of Kenya's best young social entrepreneurs, what gave you the courage to leave Akira Chicks?
I must say that moment gave me so much validation for all the work that I had done, and I felt that it was recognition for the work that I had done. And in that moment, I felt like it's surprising, but in that moment, I felt like, it's time, yeah? I have gotten the recognition. Accuratrix is on a good path. And I felt like it was like a relay race. I had run my section of the race, and it was time for me to pass on the baton to somebody else to take it to another level. It was a very scary experience. I can't say that I just did it overnight. There was a lot of battles in my mind. It involved talking to very many people, talking to my teammates. But I just believe that the team I was working with was equipped, and I was ready for whatever was coming next in life.
And what role, if any, did Acumen and the fellows, your fellow fellows, have? Not only in your decisions then, but what you've been doing since?
Acumen played a really big role. Actually, what I keep on telling people is the Acumen Fellows and the Acumen team asked me the questions I was afraid of asking myself. So I had been feeling that it was time for me to move on to something else. But from when we began Accuratrix to that point, Accuratrix defined my life, So my fear was, so how do I move on from this identity? So what will people call me? I'll be Judy of what? People used to call me Accuratrix, like it was part of my name. Yes. So people asked me, like, what are you actually afraid of? And actually losing that identity was part of it, And, once I got down to what I feared, now I could actually face my fear. And they worked with me throughout the whole process. I remember when I was going to tell my team, that this is what I'm thinking. It was very hard for me. I mean, these are people who you've rounded up. You told them this is the vision. This is what we're doing. And then along the journey, you're like, when everything seems to be going well, you're like, okay, I'm thinking of actually doing something else. So I think Acumen held the space for me to enable me to have such difficult conversations, first with myself, and two with the team, and just with everybody else who had sold to the vision of Accuratrix.
Thank you. And Laura, young woman from Colombia, ends up in Lahore, Pakistan, works for another Acumen Fellow, spends a year there, and somehow decides that she's going to now bring Acumen to Colombia. Could you start by saying a little bit about the experience in Pakistan for you as a Colombian woman, and the experience that you had with the Pakistan Fellows, even though you weren't a Pakistan Fellow while you were there?
Sure. Well, first of all, being a Colombian woman in Pakistan was very different to what I imagined. I felt I was going to clash with that part of society that I didn't know how to navigate well. I was well aware that it was going to be a first time in which I had to say something that had always been pointed as the other. And I felt it was going to be hard to fit in. It was going to be hard to understand. But everyone was just so welcoming, and the fellowship creates in you this sense of curiosity and this sense of deeply listening. That it was actually easier to navigate than I thought it was. I had a fantastic year in Pakistan, and it also made me realize how much of who I am and my identity is created by the surroundings I had and the opportunity that I had, and that sometimes what other women, Pakistani women, admire from me was not a result of something that I've done, but just the result of how different our words look in a way. But if we did dive deeper, there was so much connection in what we valued on life and how much we valued this connection between humans beyond the differences of tribes and differences of culture. And what it implies to collaborate and to work with a lot of Pakistani fellows, not only just women, but in general. It is a very tight-knit community, the Pakistani fellows, and they were there for me from helping me understand the culture to also helping me understand the changes that I was trying to implement in the organization that I was working at. Would they make sense in the context that we were trying to implement them? What needed to be different for these changes to be successful? It was just such a great reality check that I felt all the time supported, and all the time I knew it was just not me implementing a change, but it was just a community of people helping us implement these changes in Amal.
And do you have examples, Laura, of specific, concrete collaborations that actually resulted in how Amal's work changed?
Yeah, I can tell you about many, actually. So starting from, I worked for a fellow, like you mentioned before. Second, we were service providers of Javad Aslam from ANC, another Acumen Fellow. He was working on how to train his new hires, and we used the content of the Amal Fellowship to train his new hires. I ended meeting Sohaib, who was then an employee of Amal Academy, and then decided to launch his own venture, and came 2 years later a fellow himself. And also, I worked with Star Rook, who at the time was not an Acumen Fellow, but now is, due to all the support and strong support that she's given Amal in terms of operations. So not only those five, in addition to that, all those things that we did together was thinking through. We sat on education tables, thinking through how we could change the education system for Pakistan, besides Amal, besides the other ventures that other fellows had in different regions around education. So it was just like a continuing ripple effect, and like how all these ripple effects came together. My time in Pakistan, for sure.
Thanks. And Laura, we're already running out of time. So you are taking the Acumen Fellows into Colombia. It's a post-conflict country. There are different issues that you'll be focused on. Well, number one, in a short answer, why? Why Colombia for Acumen now? And what are some of your real hopes for this venture?
Sure. So why Colombia for Acumen now? I would say it's more relevant than ever. After signing the peace treaty with the FARC guerrillas, we have a historic one-time opportunity of supporting bottom-up approaches and bring them, give them voices. Bring together a community of individuals that are already leading plenty of initiatives to build peace in Colombia and to build what Colombia 2.0 could look like. And what Acumen can do here is help to amplify their voices, catalyze what they can do together, and also intentionally creating moments of encounters with the other, and have a community that's there to have the conversations that we as a nation have not dared to have just yet.
Wow. Good job. Thank you. Judith, I keep seeing you raising you're shaking your head as well, so I think you might need to go join. Laura, one last question for you is, and it's really how I'm about to start the closing talk here, and really start with this idea that last year was such a year of cynicism, and this year is a year of an opening, and that last year we all asked ourselves not just what can we give to the world, but what does the world need from us? And from your perspective, given everything that you know, not only about the East Africa Fellows, but the fellows around the world, including what Laura is doing in Latin America, what does the world need from Acumen, and specifically the Acumen Fellowship?
I think what the world needs from Acumen is for Acumen to continue the work that it's doing, which is creating a space for leaders, people who are idealistic, who want to change the world. So there's an Acumen fellow called Kenolo. When we met him, he said that for a long time he felt that he was mad. He was crazy to think that he can change the world. And then he came to Acumen, and he felt like it was a mental institution because everybody else is mad and crazy and thinking that they can change the world. And I think that's the value of Acumen, creating a space for all of us who think who are crazy enough to think that we can change the world, and then putting us in a place where we challenge each other, where we, deal with our biases. What I really like about Acumen is you put people who think differently. Like, we are all very opinionated. We hold closely to our ideas, but you put us in a safe space where we can challenge each other and see each other from, empathize where somebody else is coming from. And I feel like that's where solutions are going to come from. When you start putting yourself in somebody else's shoes, somebody who's different from you, you see them as a human being, you see why they think how they think. And now when you're thinking of solutions, you're not just beating down somebody with what you think. You come from a point of understanding. And I feel like that is the value of Acumen, challenging us to be better for ourselves and for the people who we serve, whether it's in our countries, whether it's in our companies, just to be better versions of ourselves. And what I like is that because of the culture that is created of constantly checking on each other, I feel like you have if you see an Acumen Fellow, there's an open check for checking each other, correcting each other, because we hold each other to a standard, And I think that's the value. That is the value that I see.
Wow, thank you. Before we brought you up, we had the manifesto up on the wall, and the themes that you both have talked about in terms of listening to voices unheard, the hard-edged hope, the resilience, the whole level of promise that you all bring to the world is just incredibly inspiring, and we couldn't feel prouder to have you as part of the Acumen community. And I know this group is going to be hearing a lot more from you, so thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.